The Fluffy and the CEO podcast is a sister and brother from the Midwest, bringing their unique perspectives on life, family, work, and the human condition. I hope you're ready to have an adult conversation. On today's episode, we discuss Karens. All right, guys, welcome. Episode 3. How's it going? How you feeling? What do you got there, Fluffy?
I'm wearing a cat alien abduction sweatshirt today.
A cat alien abduction sweatshirt.
Yep.
So it looks like you got something in a bowl there, too?
Yeah, I want to offer. Did Ryan know it was International Women's Week this week?
I did.
But
hang on, the question is, did you see who received the award?
The award for what?
Did you see who our First Lady gave it to?
No.
Well, it was a politician, I believe, in another country, but it was the first transgender individual to receive the Women's Award. But it was a male, obviously, and a female.
Oh, really? Wow, I won't watch too much of QVC this week.
Just Google it when you go home.
Okay.
So are those special M&Ms?
Yeah, those are M&Ms released special. They're purple, green, and chocolate M&Ms for International Women's Week.
Excellent.
I like the purple.
Yeah, they kind of go with your shirt.
Yeah.
How you doing, Ryan?
I'm doing good. Friday, so all is well with the world.
Awesome. So our format for this podcast is to bring our audience along some of the conversations we might have over the kitchen table, things that are important in our lives, and hopefully something that everyone can relate to. So with that said, are you ready for an adult conversation?
Ready.
Ready.
Today's topic, the Karen phenomenon.
Ooh, a juicy one. A juicy topic.
Do you know what a Karen is, CEO?
I believe I do.
What is a Karen?
Well, in my mind, it's usually an individual. In this case, pop culture is identified as a female, and they become unhinged in a certain situation and exhibit behavior that's unhinged.
My definition of a Karen is an older woman that is cruel, judgmental, selfish, and or entitled.
Would you guys like to know what Wikipedia calls a Karen?
Sure.
A Karen is a slang term for a white woman perceived as entitled or demanding beyond the scope of what is normal.
Yep. Pretty accurate.
Now, see, what I want to talk about is why did they emphasize white?
Good question.
Yeah.
The rest of the definition. The term is often portrayed in memes depicting white women who use their white privilege to demand their own way.
Yep, I can see that. Totally agree.
And see, this is why I hate my brain. So we're supposed to be talking about Karen, but I hear that. All my brain's thinking right now is this is why they inflame society and we can't get along.
But I think entitled is a huge part of that definition. I don't think you can be a Karen without being entitled. Do you?
Oh, sure. You could go in the grocery store and they give you the wrong change and somebody can start throwing stuff.
That's true.
So do you think Karens are born or are they created?
Created.
Created.
How so?
Like you said, Wikipedia, we live now in the internet time. Someone's just figured a way to kind of put a phrase on it, and then they do the memes, and it's kind of just took root.
And it's amazing that so many Karens are still out there because I know Ryan would agree with me. You're on video everywhere you go. So if you display that type of behavior, you should know better. You're on video everywhere, but they're out there.
And I think a Karen, too, a lot of people, we all understand if an individual's having a stressful day. Let's say a woman or a man, in this case it'd be a woman because we're talking about the word Karen, trips in a puddle or something. That's not really, and she throws a fit. I don't consider that unhinged. I can identify with the frustration and the stress. But, you've seen the video, like say, as an example, if your neighbor cuts your grass and she comes outside and starts raging on the 10-year-old who's trying to do her a favor, you would say that would be a Karen situation, correct?
Yes, and I love you posted a Karen situation on your Facebook page of a lady trying to check out, and she was being very hard on the cashier. You're not handling my eggs right. You're not going
job.
fast enough. And the poor cashier, she just loses it, rightly so.
Now, that specific video, you're 100% right, and that's also was the definition of entitlement.
Yes.
She had no discernment for, understanding that girl and the patience and the stress she's under.
But I will say after COVID, I have noticed in stores and grocery stores, people being incredibly kind. So I think a lot of people coming out of COVID have taken an attitude of gratitude. So I've seen incredible kindness after COVID too.
So you both agreed that Karens are created and it's based in entitlement, but is there any other maybe influences that maybe forces or transitions somebody into Karendom?
Well, my definition said, and I agree with Ryan, that a Karen can be of any age, but usually it's a middle-aged woman. And let's give the metaphor of a car fuel tank. So when your tank is low, your car tank is low on gas or empty, your car doesn't run. A woman, we are such emotional creatures and we give so much. It's just our nature. We're nurturers. And we don't need thanks and gratitude and appreciation all the time. But let's say when we're talking in regards to Karens, an older woman is married, has kids, and hasn't heard, "Thank you, Mom," for a long time, hasn't received appreciation from her spouse. We can take that for a long time, but just like any human being, we need gratitude and appreciation. And if a woman hasn't received that, if her tank is empty, she's more likely to go off and exhibit Karen behavior. We need our tank full, or some attention to our tank.
How do you think the women's tank in the 1700s were?
That's a good question. Completely empty.
But don't you think in the 1700s, I'm talking before electricity, I'm talking about before a building structure. Do you think the woman became unhinged like that? No. You know why? Because she was keeping the hut warm, cooking the deer or the animal the guy just killed. Kind of like Eric said, it's becoming emotional because society has created that. So when you say women need these emotions, we need our tank filled, we need that, we crave that. When you weren't alive in the 1700s, you crave it now because society's created that. In the 1700s, your brain wasn't even thinking about that because the living conditions in society was so rough and rugged. You didn't have that emotional, I need this, I need that. You were just trying to get through the day with your immediate family.
I completely agree with that, but we're not in the 1700s anymore.
Well, that's what I'm asking you. Do you think there's been progression or regression? Do you think that Karens exhibit? So you're right, we're in 2023. So do you think that behavior is progressing or regressing? If they didn't do it in the 1700s and they're doing it now, and your answer was like, well, we're not living in that times. Agreed. I'm just saying, do you think we're progressing or regressing?
Well, I don't think you can frame it in that way. We're just saying that women need appreciation, women need gratitude. I don't think that's wrong.
Oh, I'm in 100% agreement. I'm just asking you, why didn't the woman not need it in the 1700s? Or, to use your exact answer,
because it was just survival at that time. We've evolved past survival.
Have we evolved?
Yes.
So you feel that when you look out in society, those moments to you are more pure and tell you that that individual is progressed better than the one in the 1700s who would not throw the fit, who had that understanding of what's important and what's not.
Well, I disagree comparing a woman in the 17th century to a woman having a Karen attack as synonymous.
True, but remember, we're trying to ask the question. The moderator was like, well, who's created this Karen phenomenon? So if you and I can agree, and we don't agree on a lot, we agreed on this, well, that didn't exist in the 1700s. I find that fascinating. You don't?
Well, it couldn't exist because, like I said, in the 1700s, it was all about survival.
1800s, 1900s. Didn't even happen in 1950.
Because we weren't allowed to have a Karen attack. Remember, let's talk about history, Ryan, okay? So in the Middle Ages, after a woman gave birth, now a lot of women suffer with postpartum syndrome, right? After they give birth to a baby, okay? And they get treatment for that, and they get compassion for that. In the 1900s, you weren't allowed to be crabby to your husband. You weren't allowed to have a bad day and voice your opinion. Guess what? In the Middle Ages, if you did, you had a mask put on you. So women did not have a voice, weren't able to express their opinion to anyone.
Well, they're expressing now. That's why we're talking about the Karen. Do you think that's a good way to express it?
The behavior, absolutely not. But we're human, right? Do you have bad days?
Absolutely. I'm just saying, what's the male, or maybe I don't know. I'll ask you, are males Karens, or is there a term for the male?
Well, the internet says they're referred to as Kens.
How come I've never really seen a video or someone's tagged it like this is a Ken episode? Why has that not took root then?
Well, that's a good point. I haven't seen many of those
I've never seen
videos
one, to
either.
be honest with you.
But I think a Ken behavior is more subtle. And it's not an explosive as a Karen episode. But if you ask women for Ken examples, they can give you a lot. In the workplace, through their husbands, just men in general. And I think that Ken behavior exhibits itself as impatient, condescending, undermining. So that behavior, I think, is the same, but it doesn't manifest itself as explosively as a Karen episode.
I agree with that.
So do you think men can have an entitlement mentality just as well as women can? If really that behavior is rooted in a sense of entitlement?
Sure. I mean, hell, I can feel entitled if you're allowed to do something repeatedly. I just think subconsciously you can fall in that trap if you're not careful, which is why it's paramount. You have a circle of either your family or friends or somebody that gives you that counterweight, that balance.
And I think today CEO might disagree, but I think it's privilege.
What do you mean by that? Privilege for what?
Well, if you are part of a privileged class, you feel more entitled. And we can't escape that one of the privileged classes is being white.
Yeah, but see, again, that just creates constant division. The more rhetoric that we use the word white, the word black, the further we'll get from conversations and ending all the things that we know that's wrong in society. Because when you say a color, you're immediately putting in your brain an image or something. The reality is it's just a human being. We've been conditioned. I'm a free spirit. I'm a free thinker. So that's why a lot of people can't handle me, because I'm not going to be conditioned. I'm not going to just regurgitate what a book says, because a book was written by another human being. We're human beings, aren't we?
Yes, but we can't move past those types of discussions without admitting that, acknowledging history. When a minority person hears, I don't like when you put white or a color on it, I think they hear, well, you don't want to discuss history. You don't want to acknowledge the past. So I think that's a real issue. We need to acknowledge the past.
Well, have you ever straight up asked a black person? You know, your brother's got stores in the inner city. I'm very comfortable in this subject. Have you ever asked them their opinions, what they think?
Well, I would assume that they would vary a great
You
deal.
don't have to assume, I can tell you. They don't want to hear that. They want to be viewed as a human being. At some point, man, you move, you go forward, you start a process. History will always be there. They're well aware of it. Do you think they want to hear that every single day? You got to use logic. If you lost, let's say you lost something that was special to you, you're already aware of that loss. You don't want to be reminded of it every single day. You want to believe in some hope. You want to believe in that there's a light somewhere.
I agree. So maybe my heart feels guilt. Maybe it's more my issue.
But if you feel guilt and you have issues, this is where I'm too strong for something, you can do something about it. You don't have to do a podcast, but to do something about it, you have to be involved in that situation and try to create change.
It's true. That's very true.
So, do you think that we all have a little bit of a Karen in us?
Sure. We're all human. We all get angry. And the key, though, I think, is try never to lose control. We all get angry, but it's not good to lose control. We're all emotional, so that happens.
And then when people get emotional, you can't have conversation. We all know that. That's why the Middle East has never had peace.
That's true.
That is a hot button with me. I do not want to talk or deal with people who cannot control their emotions, because at a certain age, you got to look in the mirror and say, I'm still a child, man. I'm still being controlled. Yes, obviously you can have emotions. I get upset like nobody else, but you have to try to really prevent it, because the noise that's going on in society right now, don't you think you and I are living in noise that even our parents didn't even have to go through? So it's becoming so important to be able to have just a calm conversation with people, because everyone's on edge.
True, but the two words are, what the two words that are the most of a trigger for a woman from a man along those lines?
Calm down.
Yes! Yes!
Which confirms my whole argument. That's like a bow tie and a present. If that's a trigger, then the woman's well aware that that's one thing that they struggle with, is the emotion side.
Well, our reaction is, okay, you're telling me to calm down. You need to rev up. It drives us crazy when you tell us to calm down, because you're flat and you're not emotional. So we'd like to see a little emotion from you.
Well, I'll speak for myself. I choose where I direct my emotion. I'm not going to direct my emotion as something that's not going to create a benefit or do anything. I'm going to save that energy when I need to expel it.
But realize that emotions are not always conscious.
Oh, agreed.
Okay.
Like you said, we're human.
Yeah.
So let's go back to that tank analogy that you were going in terms of a woman's heart being a tank. Is that sometimes emotions are key to that, and maybe a man showing some emotion is part of filling that tank?
Yes, absolutely. I think men feel that if they're gentle and kind, they lose their masculinity. The most attractive men to me are strong, but also gentle and kind. I think that's the perfect example of the perfect man.
I'd agree with her on that.
And I think women, you have to feed our hearts, and with men, you have to feed their egos. Do you agree with that, Ryan?
Oh, absolutely. The woman's heart, male ego, I agree with that 100%. Oh, well, I was thinking about and thought while you were talking, to be brutally honest, I was like, okay, I'll ask you a question. And this is somewhat deep, so you don't get too far in the weeds, but we're talking about Karen, we're talking about all these things and what the woman needs. So if the divorce rate is at the highest it's ever been,
70%.
so do you think that's confirmation that the female is not getting from what they need from the male?
Definitely. And they say the number one reason for divorce today is financial issues.
Do you put that on the male or do you put that on the female?
I put it on both. I really do. Women can, you can have a husband that wants to have a budget, but the woman wants to go to Disney World 4 times a year, and the man tries to ascribe to the philosophy, happy wife, happy life, but they get into debt. And then the opposite side of that coin is you can have a woman that wants to have a budget, but the man likes to go fishing or hunting and has a bunch of toys. So it's absolutely, it can be either one.
Yeah, I have a different opinion on that. I think if it's 50-50, I think, this might trigger some people. So if you're listening to the audience, it's not meant to. I'm just asking a question. You feel that the woman working, that's not a contributing factor into the 70% divorce rate?
Definitely. But that's a woman's choice. I'm not going to say if she works outside the home and has kids and a husband, then she's...
Well, I was just probing. You said the number one reason for divorce is financial. You
It
said
is.
that.
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm trying to have an adult conversation without emotion, and I'm saying, well, if the divorce rate's 70%, isn't that really indicative because she's worn down, then she's got to cook dinner? I mean, the reality is, if you're raising a family, I'm going to ask you, I'm not a female. And I know you're going to have 25% of female that are be career and all that, or maybe 100%. I don't know. So I'll ask you, do you think any of them would like to stay home?
Well, I'm not going to make that assumption. I know there's a lot of, well, I'll take that back. I know there's a lot of women who like to work outside the home. So they have that choice. But the problem I see with men is the car seems to only go to work and back home.
No, I meant the financial. Let's stay on that track. Why do you think the financial is the number one reason for the divorce?
Because they can't work together. They can't compromise. You have to. It just can't be one person running the finances. It has to be, and that's why it's so rare. You have to agree on your finances.
Okay.
You have to make compromises.
Your opinion, but that's not in my household. And I think there's a lot of other people, and that's not chauvinistic. Some people, want 1 and 2. They don't want a relationship where it's 50-50. There are some females that say, I want the male to lead. I'm not trying to make the financial decisions. I want him to do that. I'll make the decision on the house, or I'll make the decision on the kids. Right?
Oh, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. If a woman has no problem with her husband handling the finances, great.
Well, you still got to ask yourself, we don't have to do it now, but you still got to ponder that. Why? Because I did not know that. You said that. If the financial is the number one reason for the divorce, you have to try to figure out why that is. And you have to be brutally honest with yourself. Because in my opinion, I think it's almost impossible to ask a woman to work a 40-hour week, come home, make dinner, give kids attention. They're doing it because they don't have a choice. Society has made it where it's so difficult for a male to be a single provider and provide the lifestyle that a lot of women desire.
Well, that was my whole point. Why can't the man stop at Kroger and get the groceries on the way home and bathe the kids and do the homework with the kids?
He can, but what I'm saying is both people kind of suffer. So that first thing you cited becomes collateral damage, the financial component, and then a divorce happens, and then the kids suffer. And our country, which is happening, the family unit continues to weaken.
Yes, I agree with that. But don't you think men can do, I think you have the opinion that a man should just go to work and that's it. They're not capable of doing the laundry, cooking a meal.
No, they are. I just think that for me, I'll speak for me, my life functions better if there's clear, defined roles. I find more peace in that. And I could do the laundry. I can cook myself. But no, I would prefer to pretty much just kind of handle the work concept and Katie handle the life concept. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. And if those defined roles work for you as a couple, fantastic.
But I think humans, in general, it has to be that way. I mean, without splitting hairs, it just you kind of have to have some understanding of what each person's responsible for.
So to kind of bring this back into Karens and entitlement, do you think the factor that we have this rise in Karens and the phenomenon is really based on both parents or both people having to work and do all of these things because they want to have a certain lifestyle that they feel they're entitled to, and maybe they're stressed out?
I don't necessarily think that. I think it's a lack of appreciation that a woman feels, a lack of love, a lack of appreciation.
I'd agree with the moderator. I think she's worn to the nub, so to speak.
What advice would you give someone, maybe a friend or someone in your family who may be acting like a Karen? Is there any advice you could give them?
Just that when you have those moments, just recognize you create a scenario that some people will judge you.
You really have to get down to the nitty-gritty with a person. So many people are so afraid when they see a family member or friend struggling. They're not comfortable to have a deep discussion. They just want to gloss over it. So the first thing I would do is really have a talk and get to understand why that woman is acting that way. But people don't want to get involved in other people's marriages or emotional topics, but I think that's where it starts. If you care about someone, you have to be willing to have an open and honest discussion with that person.
I agree with that.
What advice would you give someone who may encounter a Karen or be the brunt of a Karen?
Don't tolerate the behavior. Like if you're working in a restaurant or a store, I don't think those employees should tolerate that behavior. And I think that happens too often. I think the manager should give those employees permission to say, ma'am, I will not tolerate the way you're talking to me. You're going to have to leave the store or the restaurant. Because I believe you have to match people's energy.
There's some truth to that. However, if you believe in that concept, match people's energy in every situation, and I'm not saying you're wrong, you have to be aware, though, that there's going to be some outcomes that somebody can die. Because when people are in unhinged moments, which I have physically seen, I have physically lived it, so this is not me regurgitating from a book. This is my life experience. In those moments, if you're not a heck of an orator or you can't pierce that heart, people can do some pretty violent acts.
Agree.
So if I owned a restaurant, I would not want my individuals who have never had police training, military training, any type of training to tell a customer, get out. That's gas on a fire. What my CEO training would be is, hey, it's not worth them going from 8 to 9 to 10. Let's calmly get them out of the restaurant. Let's just own whatever they're saying, that, yes, we apologize, give a refund, get them off the premise so all the employees can go home to their families.
Good advice. So, wow, guys, we covered a lot of ground.
Is that 30 minutes again? I just can't get that. Just trips me out.
Really? It
I know
does
Eric's
me
like
too.
Ryan says it every time. I'm like, that. If it's 30 minutes, I really would have thought it was about 12.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it just means you were really in the moment and talking from the heart. So that's what I think we appreciate about both of you.
Last question may not be fair to you. Does it go fast for you, or you're kind of tuned in because you're watching that?
I'm fascinated. I could listen to you guys talk all day long because it does go fast. So, what did you learn about Wendy today from this
Well, one thing
conversation?
I always learned about my sisters, which is why I love her, is that I don't want her to ever acquiesce. Sometimes it drives me insane, but if there's one thing I do know, she has that McDaniel gene, which is she will stand on her own beliefs. And you have to respect that because that is not in society anymore.
Wendy, what'd you learn about Ryan today?
It just reminds me how good Ryan is with people. And he can take I love when he can take a very controversial or tough topic and just really bring it down to the basics. I love that about him.
Well, excellent. Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Liking those sound effects.
Fluffy and the CEO, starring Wendy Christensen as Fluffy and Ryan McDaniel as the CEO. Directed, produced, and moderated by Eric Christensen. This show is supported by Dunkin' Oil Company, changing the way you view energy companies. A special thanks to our VP of Merch, Catherine McDaniel. Please check out our merch at fluffyandtheceo.com. Remember, when you're feeling down, just turn on the show. Fluffy and the CEO, they'll make your day glow. With their love and laughter, they'll chase away the blues. Fluffy and the CEO, they're here for me and you.